Educator's Lead, Episode 5.
So whenever we go through trials, they always make us better if we are willing to learn from them.
Welcome to Educator's Lead, where we interview leaders in education to offer inspiration and practical advice to help launch educators into the next level of leadership. I'm your host, Jay Willis, and I want to thank you for subscribing to our show.
This is John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and you're listening to Educator's Lead. Let's join my friend Jay Willis and get ready to take your leadership to the next level.
Hello, Edu Leaders. Jay Willis here, and I'm excited to introduce our featured guest today, Jethro Jones. Jethro, are you ready to launch?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Jethro Jones is a principal of Kodiak Middle School and the host of the Transformative Principal Podcast, where he interviews principals, leaders, and influencers who help improve K-12 education throughout the world. A father of 4, Jethro attended 5 elementary schools, 1 year in a junior high, and 3 different high schools. Jethro has always pushed the envelope on learning situations, and at Kodiak Middle, he implemented a flexible schedule that allows students to have Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions and enrichments during the school day. He's provided simple solutions to complex educational problems as a principal, district coach, library supervisor, and middle school teacher. Jethro currently serves as the Region 7 Director for the Alaska Association of Secondary School Principals. That's just a brief introduction, Jethro, but tell us a little bit about yourself and your career path.
I had a non-traditional time in school and had a non-traditional time as a teacher also. I graduated from college in English and did not graduate in education, so I see things a little bit differently than others. And I'm excited to share that path with you and your listeners today, and thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on. So tell us a little bit about maybe your personal life. So you have 4 kids. That's got to keep you pretty busy.
Yeah, they're 4, 5, 8, and 9, and they are all little bundles of joy and energy, and they are a lot of fun. Also, my oldest daughter has Down syndrome, and that has taught me more about compassion and empathy in being an educational leader than probably anything else that I have experienced. Also, we live in Alaska, and I just moved up here a year and a half ago, and so I've learned to love fishing, and that's something I never thought I would enjoy, but it's kind of an addiction now, and when it's fishing season, I go out whenever I can and try to catch some salmon in the rivers here in Kodiak.
That's kind of a prerequisite, right? When you move up there, you have to decide to like fishing?
Pretty much. I don't think I had a choice.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I actually have a special needs child. Our son has muscular dystrophy, our 9-year-old, our oldest. So that's interesting.
Cool. My oldest is 9 years old also, and it's the one that has Down syndrome. Cool.
Right. So tell me a little bit. I know in the introduction we talked a little bit about kind of your different positions in your career, but if you could kind of elaborate a little bit on that and talk about, kind of the path up to school leadership.
Yeah, so I was an English language arts teacher for just 3 years, and being a teacher was a means to an end for me. My desire was to be an administrator from the beginning. Teaching wasn't really that exciting to me because that's one of my natural gifts, and I'm not saying that to brag. That comes very easily to me, and seeing how to help people understand things is something that I've been blessed with. And so the teaching part wasn't that exciting to me, but leading a group of teachers to be more effective and help students and put kids first has been something that has always been of interest to me. After I did that, our school district in Utah, where I was teaching at the time, split, and there was an opportunity to be in charge of the libraries for the district. And that was me wanting to taste what it was like to lead a group of people. And so I did that for a year, and then that position was dissolved. So I was thankful to get a curriculum specialist position in that district, where I worked with English language arts teachers in different schools, was an external coach for a school, and really enjoyed that, and then was able to be an assistant principal at a Title I elementary school. And that taught me a lot about the struggles that our kids face, the importance of trauma-informed care and educating the whole child, not just focusing on reading and math, but making sure that we are helping them be good human beings with morals and things that are important. And then finally, I became the principal of Kodiak Middle School, which is where I'm at now. And I've got to say, being a principal is, I think, the best job ever. I just love doing it, and it's a lot of fun. There's always something new every single day, and it's a great place to be.
So it sounds like you had kind of always known that you wanted to go into school leadership. Was there a specific kind of event or just a time in your life or a point that you made that decision? Or if so, could you take us kind of to that decision point?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was a kid, I always wanted to be a teacher because I loved helping people learn. And like I said, that came pretty naturally to me. And I've heard a lot of people describe what teaching is like, and they have, different perspectives. And Dave Ramsey describes it best when he talks about finding someone who has the heart of a teacher who wants to help you learn. And I met a man when I was serving a LDS mission in Russia, and his name was Philip Reber, and he was also serving a mission there as a retired man with his wife. And this was his third or fourth time leaving his family, his grandkids, and serving somebody else in a foreign country. He had been in Georgia and in Russia and Armenia, and was just, helping people. And he had been a principal and a superintendent, and there was something about the way he lived his life and who he was where I thought, that's what I need to do. I need to be able to influence great amounts of people as an educational leader. And you can impact teachers' lives and you can impact students' lives in that position. And so I was about 21 when I came back from my mission, and I decided that's what I was going to do. So I took a bunch of different classes in college, but meeting him was the one that taught me what I wanted to be and how I wanted to have that impact in my life. So I was in Russia, far away from home, and that experience helped me learn what I want to do with my life. And now here I am quite a few years later and doing exactly what I wanted to be doing. And it's amazing how that all came to pass.
That's great. So I know you've kind of talked a little bit about the journey, but if you could kind of just expound on it a little bit. I mean, did you have to... So I guess, you kind of knew that you wanted to be a school administrator, but I guess, what was that path? What did that look like? I mean, did you have to take more classes and just kind of expound on that?
Yeah. So I need to get a master's degree because nobody's going to hire you with just a bachelor's. And so I started classes before I even had a teaching job. So I graduated with my bachelor's in December, and then I started classes the following June, and then I started teaching in August. Now, because I graduated in English and not with a teaching degree, I had to take some classes to get a teacher certification at the time. So I was working on my master's, working on those alternative routes classes, and I was in my first year teaching, and my first child had just been born. So life was pretty busy. Plus, because I was a teacher and taking classes, we didn't have much money, and so I needed to work 2 other jobs. One was writing online, and the other one was delivering donuts. And I don't know how I survived that time and how I was able to get everything done. But there are times in your life where you really need to hunker down and focus, and family life was definitely not in balance at that time. And I was sacrificing a lot to be able to get to the point where I am now. In the end, it was worth it, and it was much better to be sacrificing then when my kids didn't even know who I was. Much better then than now when my kids are older and they definitely miss me when I'm not around. So it was a lot of work to do that, and I had to commute 45 minutes to where I was taking my master's classes. So there was a lot of things that could have prevented me from becoming an administrator, and it would have been really easy to give up. But I knew it's what I wanted, and I knew that it was going to be worth it in the end, and it certainly is. But there were a few dark days when I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna make it, and I just persevered and talked to people and prayed when I needed to, and that helped me get to where I wanted to be.
So kind of talking about the path to become an administrator, in some of those difficult times, take us to maybe one of the biggest challenges or one of the most difficult times in that journey. If you could actually just tell us that story of when that happened.
Yeah, so this actually happened not too long ago. And it's one thing to become an administrator and be an assistant principal, and it's another thing to become an actual principal. And every time you go through finding a job, that rejection and inability to get a job is difficult and hard and painful. And for me, the really difficult time, and I say this because this is when I was really affected by it, and it was when I became depressed and became not confident in my abilities to do the things that I wanted to. So I was working as an assistant principal just before I got this job, and my principal told me, I'd asked her to write me a letter of recommendation. She didn't write me one. And then she said, finally, when I was like, hey, it's time, I really need this so I can start applying. She said, well, I haven't written you yet because I need to give you some feedback. And I just don't think that you're ready to be a principal of even an elementary school. I think you need to go get a job as an assistant principal at a middle school and keep working. And that crushed me. I thought that she had my back and was supporting me. And it turns out that she didn't think that I was anywhere ready. And what was really hard was that she hadn't told me that before. And that made me feel like if she thinks this, then probably everybody else does. And here I was thinking things were going well, and they're not. My former principal was in a leadership position in the district I worked in, and I asked him what other people thought of me and why I was getting passed over for these principal jobs that I've been applying for the last 2 years. And he said that people perceived me as cocky and arrogant, and that I acted like I always had the answer. And I really felt like that was not accurate. But also I didn't know what I was doing to make people feel like that. So then it was like, she gave me a right hook, he gave me a left hook. And then, I interviewed out of state for a principal position, and the superintendent gave me feedback after that. And he said that I came across as a know-it-all and that I wasn't really a good fit for their school because of that. So that was like
Ouch.
the uppercut. And at this point, I was like, I know this is what I want to do. This is my life's mission, and I need to get going on it because I'm not getting any younger, and I want to do what I want to do. And it was really hard. And there were many days where I felt like a complete and total failure, and it was very difficult. I spent a lot of time praying and trying to figure out how I could improve, and going back to my roots and trying to figure out what was really beneficial. And I heard about this thing called a Strengths Finders test, which is what a lot of entrepreneurs do to figure out what their strengths are and how they can run a better business. And so I took the Strengths Finder test, and it actually helped me communicate the things that I was good at without sounding like a jerk who has all the answers and knows everything. Because I certainly don't. I mean, come on. So, so anyway, that was the darkest moment. All the other times, like not having enough experience, being too young, not having people take me seriously, all up until then hadn't ever gotten to me, but this time it did. And it was my darkest time as an adult that I can think of, and was very difficult to overcome when everybody is telling you, no, you can't do this. And it seems like nobody has faith in you. So, I'm sure that there is a group of people who say, yeah, he had to go all the way to Alaska to find someone who would take him. And, that's not how I see it. However, what I had to realize was that I needed to be willing to go to a place where my skills would be accepted. And my superintendent who hired me here said, we need someone at this school who is going to be cocky and arrogant. And I said, I'm your man.
That's great. So how did you get through that? I mean, I can't imagine if not just one, but three different people that I had a lot of respect for at the moment, or, before that conversation. How did you handle that? And what did you do to overcome it?
So for me personally, it was really, about faith and knowing that I believe that God has called me to be in a position like this and has set things up to help me be successful. So I believe that had a large part to do with it. In addition to that, I needed to go back and really understand why I was doing the things that I was doing. I need to understand why I wanted to be an administrator and really focus on that. And it wasn't just for the money or for being able to be the one in charge, quote unquote. It was really about being able to impact teachers and students' lives and make a place that everybody wanted to be at, and be able to create a school where kids wanted to come and teachers wanted to work. And it basically just took a lot of me sitting up at night and thinking about those things and visualizing myself doing those things, and then finding whatever other resources I could to help me find a way to improve. So the Strengths Finder book that told me what my strengths were and why they were important. Reading scriptures that helped me see my value as a human being that was not tied to my job. And that was a big part of the problem, is that I had been tying my value to what I was doing as an assistant principal. And that's not a healthy place to be. You have to have value outside of that. And I'd put too much stock in what I was doing professionally and not realizing that that there's a lot more to me than what I did as a professional. And, that's an important thing to remember.
I know for me personally, some of my greatest successes really wouldn't have happened if it hadn't been for some of my greatest failures.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say from that experience? What were some of the biggest lessons that you came away with?
So I think one of the biggest lessons is you need to listen to what other people say, but you need to realize that it's just what other people, that's their opinion. That's not the truth with a capital T. So other people perceived me and thought of me in that certain way, and that wasn't all that there was. There's more to the story. And what I needed to learn was, how do I communicate in a way that honors the people that are there and respects what they're doing without stepping on their toes? And my current superintendent has a good way of describing it. He said, when I came up here, you need to realize that there's a whole story about this school before you got here. Your chapter 1 in this book is not the chapter 1 of everybody else. So you're coming in on their chapter 50 and you're just on chapter 1. So you need to honor the previous chapters in their story. And I feel like that could have been one of my problems before, is that people acted like I had or thought I had all the answers, because I do have an answer for everything. And the way I work through things is by talking about them. So when I suggest an idea, that's my best idea at the moment, but I'm willing to change and bend and move. And this is one of the things that I had to learn, was how to suggest an idea without it sounding like this is the only idea that we can do, without it sounding like this is the only option, but this is an option, because that's really how I see it. And the way I spoke and how I carried myself made people think that that was how they should see it too.
So do you think that you would be as effective as you are as a leader now if it hadn't been for that experience?
Absolutely not. I mean, every change and difficult thing you go through helps build who you are as a person, and it shapes who you are. And earlier I talked about my daughter being born with Down syndrome and dealing with that, and how that has made me more empathetic. And people always say, like, oh, you're amazing for having a child with a disability, and I could never do that. And the truth is, Jay, you can do it because you have to do it, and you don't really have a choice. Right. So whenever we go through trials, they always make us better if we are willing to learn from them. And that's one of the things that my faith definitely informs. I have a overall belief that we're here on earth to improve and become better. So every chance we get to learn and grow, we should take advantage of. But then also every negative thing that happens to us can be seen as a growth opportunity to help us learn and grow faster and better. And so I pray for those opportunities. I relish in those opportunities. Moving out to Alaska was part of a bigger plan to force my wife and I and our family to go through some difficult things and challenges to make us better people. Moving away from our family, moving to an island in the middle of the Gulf of Alaska is definitely a different experience, and I'm grateful for it because it's made me a better person. Going through these trials has definitely made me a better leader, because I can empathize with people. I can speak with more confidence to them and say things like, this is my perception. This isn't everything. And then when people get discouraged about how they're performing, it's easy for me to remind them that this is not all that they are, and they are much more than this, and they should not let struggling in this position be a definition of who they are. And then when people aren't successful in teaching, then it's a lot easier to say, this isn't for you, and I need to help counsel you out of this by saying it's not playing to your strengths, and go find something that plays to your strengths and do that, and you'll be a lot happier and it'll be a lot better for you.
Yeah. Just talking about special needs, it is funny. I feel like, you do rise to what you need to. I mean, if circumstances are thrown at you, you will, most of us are going to rise to the occasion. And, but while I certainly would never choose circumstances like what we have, with a special needs child, at the same time, it gives you a perspective and an insight, and then even, I would even maybe say, a depth of character in some ways that you wouldn't have otherwise. So even though it wouldn't be something you'd choose, there are some benefits that come through that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of benefits. I think way more benefits than negatives in almost every situation. And, I'm sure people would love to debate that with me, but most of the time, in every trial I've been through, I've grown way more than I thought I would and become a better person because of that.
So let's get into our rapid fire questions. I have a few questions if you're ready for those.
Yes, sir.
All right. So what is the best leadership advice that you've ever received?
So when I was on a mission, the mission president told me there will always be about a third of the people that you lead that love you to death, a third that don't really care either way, and they'll just do their jobs, and about a third that hate you and criticize every move you make. And he said, don't worry about the bottom 1/3. Don't try to please them. Just do your best to ignore their nitpicking and move on with what you're doing. That has rang nearly true. What that really means is there's always somebody who doesn't like what you're doing, and don't pay much attention to them.
What would you say is your biggest strength as a school administrator?
I would say that I see things differently than a lot of other educators. In that Strengths Finder thing I talked about before, two of my strengths are strategic and futuristic, which means that I'm strategic in how I do things, and I'm futuristic in that I look to the future and see things differently than others. And so those two things are make me have crazy ideas a lot of the time. And most educators do not like crazy ideas. They're rule followers. They're focused. But those are my ideas are crazy, but they often work out okay. And when they don't, then I just deal with it and move on.
Yeah. What one or two books would you most recommend to other school leaders?
So the first one is Nicholas Nickleby by Charles Dickens, which takes place in Victorian England, and it's about education and a guy, Nicholas Nickleby, who goes through the education system over there, and it's just fascinating. And Charles Dickens is an amazing writer, and nobody has read that book, so I always recommend that one. The second one is EntreLeadership by Dave Ramsey, and that is a great book because it helps people learn about different ways to lead organizations, and really it's about leading people, not businesses or schools in general, but just leading people.
Yeah, it's a great book. What is an app or a software type tool that you would recommend to other school leaders?
I think I'm going to go with Scannable by Evernote, which is just an amazing app. You hold your phone up to a piece of paper, and it takes a picture of it, turns it into a PDF that you can then send off. And like many other principals, I'm sure, we have to fill out papers and sign things, and you snap a picture and send it off, and it is super easy, and it cuts out the edges perfectly and makes it look good. Even if you get it like off tilted, it like straightens it all out. It's just amazing.
I'll have to check that out. I actually was making a copy took a picture of a contract last night, and I was like, man, this is probably not going to turn out that great. So I'll have to check it. Scannable is what it's called?
Yep. It's going to blow your mind.
I'll check that out. Yeah. What would you say is your favorite educational quote?
So I don't know if this is an educational quote or not, but I I believe it was by Abraham Lincoln, and if it wasn't, then whoever it was by was brilliant. And it's whether you think you can or you can't, you're probably right.
That's great. I think Henry Ford might be attributed to that one as well. I'm not sure about that. But it may have been Abraham Lincoln who first said it. What advice would you have for working with the student population that you serve?
So I take this question as working with the group of kids that you're working with, and
right.
Whether you're talking about demographics or just the age group, I wasn't sure. So I'm going with age group. Get to know them and their interests. For me at the middle school, I need to be watching Vines, know what whipping looks like, and download the games that they play onto my phone so that when kids are playing Smashy Road Wanted or something, I can go see what they're doing and pull out my phone and say, oh, this is my high score, and do you have this car yet? This one's pretty cool. That really goes a long way for them to be like, wait a minute, does this guy know what I'm talking about? So then they can trust you a little bit better. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. What piece of advice do you have for working with the educators that you lead, like the other teachers?
I would say teach them about storylines. It will change your life forever, totally guaranteed. And I'll give you a brief 30-second description of what storylines is. We all have these things that go on in our heads where we think that person is mad at me for this reason because they looked at me funny, or that person, whatever. When those happen, they can create these storylines that just fester. So what I do with my teachers and students and staff is I have a little card on my door that says, I have a storyline. And somebody brings that to me and says, I have a storyline. That's my cue to listen, be empathetic, and wait for them to describe what's going on so that I can tell them if they're right or not. 99% of the time they're wrong, and those storylines are crazy, and I wasn't mad at them about something, but they have that storyline. It makes it hard for us to communicate. When they tell me their storyline, I can resolve the concern, and we can move on with our life, and it doesn't have to be a bother, and it's amazing. Every time I do that with somebody, we grow closer, do better, and it's awesome.
Now, is this something you picked up in a book, or is there a resource people could look into that would kind of tell them a little bit more about that process?
I would look at my website, jethrojones.com, and search for storylines. I've learned about it over time, and then I've developed some communication cards that I put on my door that help people understand. Send me a message.
That's a great
if you want
idea.
to hear more, because I'll definitely help you out.
Yeah, that's a great idea. What's the best way to connect with you? You mentioned your website. Is that pretty much the best way?
Yep, jethrojones.com. I'm also on Twitter at Jethro Jones. My phone number is 801-7-JETHRO, so feel free to call me. But if you go to jethrojones.com/educatorslead, I'll give you the top 5 things transformative principals do, which is basically a compilation of what I've learned from doing 100 episodes of my podcast, Transformative Principal.
That's great. Thank you for that freebie for our listeners. I appreciate that. So what final piece of advice would you have for a school administrator or someone who wants to become a school administrator one day?
I'm going to take this from my personal story. If you're struggling to get a job as a principal, ask someone what others think of you and make sure that they're being honest. Don't let them get away with saying, oh, no, everybody thinks you're great. Get the dirt on yourself so that you can rise above it and make your life better.
Awesome. EduLeaders, this has been a great interview today. For the show notes of today's show and other resources, visit educatorslead.com and type the word Jethro into the search tool to find his show notes. Jethro, thank you for sharing your journey with us today. And that wraps up another episode of Educators Lead. This podcast is brought to you by Mometrics, the #1 test preparation company. Mometrics offers study materials for over 1,800 different exams, including the SAT, ACT, GED, end-of-course exams, state standard exams like the STAR, teacher certification exams, advanced placement, CLEP, ASVAB, GRE, and so many more. Mometrics takes the mountains of information students could be tested over for any given exam and boils it all down to just the fluff-free golden nuggets of information that are most likely to be on the exam. They couple that with some great study tips and test-taking strategies to help students maximize their test scores. With their interactive tutorial videos and a layout that makes lesson planning easy, Mometrics study guides, flashcards, and practice questions are a great fit for individual or classroom use. To learn more about our products and our vault of hundreds of free tutorial videos, please visit educatorslead.com/test prep. That's educatorslead.com/test prep. EduLeaders, thank you for joining us on Educators Lead. Visit us at educatorslead.com for everything we talked about today, free resources, and much, much more.